Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Jennifer Mandel. I am a college coach with School Match for You and an assistant principal in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am the parent of 3 boys, all business majors. 1 is a recent college graduate and 2 are currently in college.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good morning, friends. I hope you're staying safe out there. I know a sizable part of the country got hit hard with snow and storms. So far, it's been a nothing burger here, but I'm like 18 minutes south of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport in Atlanta. I know the northern part of Atlanta is already getting, in some inclement weather. So far here, just a lot of rain, but they say freezing rain is coming our way tonight. I had to actually go put these blankets out on my camellias so they'll survive. So we'll see what happens tonight and tomorrow, but stay safe. Friends, my heart breaks for the people of Minneapolis right now. Such a beautiful city. I love that city. And now all this tumultuous behavior by ICE. The city is on the edge in turmoil. Friends, I have 3 nieces, but I'm closest by far to my brother Norm's second daughter who lives in Minneapolis. And the events there have just rocked her and her husband and to the core, really, that right now looks like they're planning to move to Vancouver in 2027. All because of what's gone down in the city in the last month. At least that's the plan. But thoughts, prayers, and verbal support for all the residents of that beautiful city who are just on the edge and living in fear. I also can't help still think like an admission officer. Susan and I talk about this. Once an admission officer, always an admission officer. You kind of trains your brain to think in a certain kind of way. And I just can't imagine being at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities right now, or Macalester College, or the University of St. Thomas, or Hamline University, or Augsburg University, St. Catherine's University, Bethel University. These are like all schools in that area. Now, women's colleges like St. Catherine's are already under so many challenges. Pressure's coming at them in so many ways. Augsburg as well. They have so many first-gen students, so they don't have that wealthy clientele that a lot of the private schools have. And then Bethel is a Christian school, and they were already under some financial duress. I just can't imagine trying to convince students to come across the country or even come from outside the country, or quite honestly, even a neighboring state, to send their kids here in the fall. Events like suicides and homicides, they really impact colleges. Sure, there are going to be schools like Brown that have such a brand name that they're not too adversely impacted, certainly not in the long term. But these pressures coming at colleges right now, it's just awful. It's just an awful lot to try to make your budget when your city is embroiled in civil unrest for months. All right, that's too deep. Just on my mind this morning. Friends, I'm calling an audible today. I was originally going to cover external outside scholarships, and I promise you I will cover that in the month of February. But one of the counselors on my team, Jennifer Mandel from Wisconsin, did something which she often does, say something pretty profound in a conversation that I'm having with her. And we were just talking this week, and she said something, and it reminded me there's been something that I've wanted to mention at least once a year, a particular topic. And so you're going to hear from Jennifer today to chat about that topic. What is the topic? How colleges vary and how and when they expect each student to communicate what their health care coverage will be for the upcoming year and what the consequences are if you don't adhere to their timelines. After that, we'll hear part 2 of 3 of my interview with V. Peter Pitts, known as the Small College Guy. Peter will continue talking about his recent book, Small College Magic. And we just continue to have a real robust conversation about small colleges, opportunities as well as challenges that they face. Special thanks to all of you who talk about our podcast on social media. You know, Peter sent me an email earlier this week. He said, I'm happy. You know, he's been getting a lot of social media activity that has explicitly come from listener to your College Bound Kid podcast, talking about his interview on social media, spreading the word on Facebook. And we really appreciate that tremendously. It's a lot of how our audiences grow. Friends, a couple quick announcements. I'm doing a meet and greet in South Florida for all of our South Florida listeners. I'm very excited about this. I can't wait. I kind of finalize all my plans. I'm going to actually be staying in Plantation, Florida for 7 days. And then after that, I'll be over at Lynn University in Boca for a 3-day counselor program there. So I'll be in South Florida for 10 days. But our event's at the American Heritage School, Broward Campus in Plantation. It's on Thursday, February 19th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And that's only 3.5 weeks away. The sign-up sheet is at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the events page. It's the first one. You can't miss it. If you live in the area or if you're traveling to the area, come on out. I'd love to meet you. Meeting our listeners fires me up. It makes me want to start working on the next episode right away. So hope to see you there. Now, friends, you may remember a few months ago when I said that we were going to have a Colorado meet and greet, an event. So Hillary from Colorado College, Kate from CU Boulder, and Grace from Grinnell College, who's the regional rep in Denver, who, by the way, I'm interviewing on the 29th, whatever date that is, of January. So I got an interview coming up with Grace. The same 3 ladies that did our case studies are going to do a get-together, a question and answer session, and further discussion on how admission officers read files. So think of like if you went through our first case studies with them, you got the bachelor's version, but now you're ready to go to the master's level and learn even more. So the date and location are set Wednesday, April 8th, 6 to 8 p.m. Centaurus High School in Lafayette, Colorado, which is 20 miles from Denver, 10 miles from Boulder. So if you are in Colorado or traveling to Colorado, please come out and learn. The sign-up sheet is up on our website under the events tab for that event. Now, that Denver event will actually be our 10th in-person meet and greet. I was just thinking about it. Our first one ever, Raleigh, North Carolina. And then we did 3 in California, San Diego, Santa Monica, and Fremont. And then we did 4 in Texas. We did Austin, we did San Antonio, we did Dallas, and we did a Central Texas event. And then now the South Florida event will be number 9, and then this Denver event will be number 10. I say Denver, but it's, 20 miles from Denver, Lafayette, Centaurus High School. Hope I'm saying Centaurus High School. Hope I said that right. One more announcement. We will have our final meet and greet for 2026. And that's going to be in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Susan Tree will be there. Andy Strickler will be there. There may be some others on our team joining that. That's around the NACAC conference. St. Paul's, Minneapolis, early October. I'll be letting you know when we have an exact date. That one's still 8.5 months away. Friends, none of these events happen without our generous listeners. Shout out to Beth and Ludi for reaching out and hosting the South Florida event. Special thanks to Sheridan for all the work she's been doing to make the Colorado event happen. And special thanks for Jason from St. Paul's, who reached out to host our St. Paul's event. All of these are podcast listeners with really big hearts who stepped up big time, and thank you for that. Friends, I interview Alina Hicks, who's over the SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas office this Wednesday. And on Thursday, I have an interview with 3 experts on placing athletes in college. So if you have any questions you want me to ask, it's actually not too late if right away you would send those to speakpipe.com/YCBK. I can't promise I will incorporate them, but I will seriously consider adding any question you send in to those 2 interviews. Or, like I said, I'm interviewing Grace, Robertson Lloyd on being our regional. If you have any questions about that, that's coming up here in the next 5 days as well. Feel free to send those in. I love to incorporate listener questions anytime I can into my interviews. Friends, you may have noticed that we now have 7 books for you to select from. If you have any question, comment, or tip we play on SpeakPipe and we air it, then you're entitled to it. And this includes the 20 of you who sent in tips for episode 600. So I'm going to play our new options for you. But remember, we have a brand new email address, and it's yourcollegeboundkid@gmail.com. So we do need you to send in your full address and the book that you want, and we'll get that out to you. So let's listen to our new offerings for anybody who has sent in any message since episode 500 is when we started the giveaway. If you've sent in a message since episode 500 and we've aired it. Now, if you've already got 1 book, then you can't get another unless you send in a second question that we air. All right, let's take a listen. Friends, you now have 7 books you can pick from if we play your SpeakPipe question or comment or tip on the air. We have our 4 Princeton review books, and we have about 70 left to give away from that. The Best 390 Colleges, College Admissions 101, Essays That Kick Apps, and Princeton Digital SAT Prep. Our 3 new additions are The Calm College Method by Lisa Ruff and Linda Depker, paperback or Kindle, Peter Pitt's Small College Magic Kindle version, and College Unmazed has a book, Your Guide to Design and Document Your Home School by Holly Ramsey and Michelle Everett, paperback edition. Our authors have generously agreed to cover the shipping and handling. Just send your name and full address, the book that you want, and the episode number where we aired your SpeakPipe question or tip. Please send that to yourcollegeboundkid@gmail.com. We'll forward your request to the authors. Okay, friends, let's transition to my conversation with Jennifer Mandel about healthcare coverage.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, I'm here with Jennifer Mandel from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Mark.
So some of you may remember Jennifer. She was on the podcast. What would you say, Jen? 3 to 6 months ago? Maybe
about 6 months ago.
Maybe.
It was a while ago.
Maybe, yeah. But we get new listeners all the time. So I'm going to have you do a very brief introduction.
Great. So my name is Jennifer, and I am a mom in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I have 3 boys. 2 of them are still in college, and 1 graduated from college. They are all business majors, and I am an assistant principal, and I also am a counselor with Mark doing college counseling.
Thank you. So yeah, Jen did a segment before on business majors and, big school, small school, one at a big state flagship, and that decision and a few other things. So every now and then Jen says something very profound, and I'm like, I need our podcast listeners to hear it when we were talking, and that happened the other day. And so I literally called an audible because I was going to do something on outside external scholarships, which I'm still going to do. But I actually felt this had more time sensitivity. So we're going to talk today about a couple of things, but healthcare policies that schools have is the first one. There's not a day that goes by that Jen and I aren't talking about students. So she says some profound things. And why don't you share what you said on healthcare, Jen, and we'll kick it off.
So Mark and I were in a session with a student and parent, and we were talking about some things to look for with colleges and things coming up. And I forgot how the conversation started. Maybe you remember, but it was one thing to look for is in the beginning of the school year, some colleges will automatically sign your student up for healthcare. Now, they do tell you ahead of time, but it's something that you want to be on the lookout for and read the fine print for. And all three of my boys went to different colleges. And out of the three colleges, only one college did this. And I was able to tell the parent that I know at his school, it was in the fall, that every year they automatically sign your student up if you don't opt out. So there's usually chatter on the Facebook groups. I have planted a note on my Google Calendar annually every year just to get ahead of it and make sure that before that deadline hits to talk to my son about logging into the portal. And I think it's through the portal. He knows who to access, basically to opt out of the healthcare, because for us, it's not an option that we need. You have to look at your university and figure out if you have to use the healthcare. If you need the healthcare, you should know your own healthcare options. I'm obviously not going to get into that, but it's something that you want to look at, because if you don't need it, it can be very expensive, and there's no sense in purchasing healthcare when you already have a healthcare plan. So every year we look, it's on my calendar, and you usually see this in the Facebook groups where parents, especially the new parents who are incoming freshmen or first year, are looking at this and they don't know about it. And seasoned parents will tell them, no, this is how you do it. And sometimes parents have questions about the healthcare. Usually parents just direct them back to the university to get those questions answered. But it's definitely something you want to opt out of if you don't need, because it can be a real extra cost if it's not needed.
Yeah, and you summarized that well. So sometimes people will refer to this as the hard waiver, soft waiver approach that different schools use. And the hard waiver policy, which actually is the most common policy, and under this policy, the college will automatically bill you for their student health insurance, in part as part of your tuition. And to get that removed, you have to proactively submit a waiver proving that you have other coverage. Now, it used to be worse before, with Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. A lot of, people can now have they can be on their parents' policy up to age 26, and most of the time that's sufficient. In the past, there would be more problems where schools would be like, that policy doesn't work here. And you still can run into that. Like some schools are very sticklers on which coverage policies work in their state. And if you have one that doesn't work in their state, then you're going to have to pay for the school's health insurance. Now, people say, why are they doing this? Well, it's partly a protection against liability. They have to think about you slipping and falling. They have to think about all kinds of things that could happen. And are you going to have the healthcare coverage if you have an emergency? So that's part of it. But from a parent or a student standpoint, now's a time when people are making decisions, and you should look into the policies of the different schools that your student is considering, because you could find yourself with a hefty bill. Like there's some schools where the bill's over $7,000. And that's not, if you're not planning for that and they say, oh, we're not accepting your health insurance, that's not the kind of thing you want to find out like right when you're going to pay. Now, these schools, they vary, but most of the time this has to be done by mid-July. Some of them go all the way till September 1. That's kind of the range that you'll find when this stuff has to be reconciled. It's usually kind of when that first tuition bill comes out and it's due. That's very common. But you want to figure this out ahead of time. Are the schools under consideration? One, are they going to take my health insurance? If not, am I prepared to pay that cost? And then you should also know, is it that hard waiver policy, like I mentioned, where they'll automatically bill you unless you prove your opt-out and you need to do it by a certain date? Or is it the more voluntary policy some people refer to like the soft waiver, where in this case they do not automatically enroll you, but it's entirely up to you to decide if you are going to opt in, and they won't automatically bill you. But that's less common. There is a third one, which is the mandatory enrollment, where they just automatically enroll you in their policy no matter what. But that's mostly with international students is where I see that the most. Occasionally some programs have it, some programs, some on the grad school level, medical, dental programs, certain things like that. I don't encounter that very often. But the bottom line is know the policy, know the deadlines, and do your research on that. Otherwise, you could get a very, very unpleasant surprise. And, I mentioned this once on the podcast years ago. Davidson, where my oldest daughter went, like a lot of schools, they had the hard waiver policy. And I was having a conversation with someone in financial aid, and she said, she was brought to tears because people will call screaming, "What is this on my bill?" And if it's past a certain date, their policy is, we sent you communication and we have to have this, and you're expected to read all that and act on that. And so they kind of had their hard deadline, and if you miss it, it goes on. And she's like, you want to see people just blow a gasket on you. And yeah, if you weren't expecting a $5,000-$6,000 bill and all of a sudden you got one, and especially if you had the coverage, you literally could have the coverage, but just because you didn't fill out the paperwork in time, it goes into the mandatory billing onto their policy. Like, schools do have that policy. And so I've kind of planned, I haven't done this every year, Jen, but it's kind of my plan to tell once a year to bring this up on the podcast, because we get new listeners all the time. Most listeners don't go back into the back catalog. I can't assume that everything we've said before people know. Some years I remember and some years I don't. But yeah, I wanted to bring that up and get your thoughts on that. And thanks for triggering my memory on this the other day. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think it's good. I actually was just looking before we met, and there was some parents saying, "I missed the deadline. What do I do?"
Wow.
And
yeah.
I'd advise, for me, I know how I organize. I put it on the Google Calendar with an email reminder. I read my email every day, but whatever it is, find those ways to remember. If it's if it's your kid's reminder, if it's in your Google Calendar, emails, memos on your phone, timers on your phone, whatever it is, just if you want to opt out. If you don't, then never mind. But just make sure you have some good reminders, because those deadlines can be money that you can use on tuition or study abroad or books or other things for your child's education or for you.
Yeah, I mean, I try to pride myself as being pretty calm, cool, and collective, but I would have been one of those people to blow a gasket if I found out I got a $5,000 or $6,000 bill for something I'm already paying an outrageous amount of money for, just because I just can't even imagine how I would react if that would have been me. It wouldn't have been good.
They don't really give you a big letter to say, "Watch out, this is coming." It's not meant to trick or deceive anybody. But there's not a big letter that's a big note. At least for my son's school, it wasn't like a big notification. It's just kind of expected that you understand all the pieces. I'm sure it was in there, but it's not like a separate letter with, certified mail. Pay attention.
Yeah, I find this is something that a lot of organizations do. They kind of almost think like your whole life can revolve around reading their correspondence. And they think, we sent you correspondence, and they're not looking at it always from a standpoint of someone who's getting a couple hundred emails a day and they're doing this and they're juggling a million balls. And, not everybody always has the mindset of, okay, very important document I need to read extremely closely when they get correspondence. And their mindset is, well, yeah, you should be doing that. And so then, and the reality is you should be doing it because the consequences are high, but I can also easily understand how somebody can miss it.
Yes, life happens.
Yes, life happens. Friends, Jennifer will be back next week to chime in on a discussion that's actually going to start on Thursday about Facebook groups with Kate and Hillary. And Jen has experience with Facebook parent groups at 3 different campuses and colleges, so I wanted to get her insights on the topic. I think that's going to really dovetail nicely with the conversation that will start on this Thursday, episode 609. Let's transition now to part 2 of 3 of my interview with V. Peter Pitts, also known as the Small College Guy.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, in part 2 of my interview with Peter Pitts, Peter shares the number one thing he feels allows students to have a distinctive experience unmatched elsewhere if they attend a small college. Peter talks about how his book, Small College Magic, is different from some of the other books on colleges. Peter has a beef with something Jeff Selingo said. We talk about it in this segment. Peter talks about how he decided to include some colleges and to omit others in his book. Listen and enjoy. Do you think also that when you're a small school and a lot of people haven't heard of you, that in of itself can be an obstacle because a lot of people will work off of the assumption if you were any good, I would have heard of you. And I know that you despise that, but I'm just being real. Like
Oh,
some people think that way, right? So do you think some of it also is we have to have something truly distinctive to make the case why you should skip over, UIUC or even UIC or Loyola, DePaul. I'm just using Chicago talk here,
mhm.
skip over all of these other schools to come to us. Part of the case, I mean, I know there's lots of things, and we'll get into all the positives of small colleges in a second, but one of the things is, well, we offer this very unique program you can't get anywhere else. And that could be the thing that could maybe
Yeah,
make a kid jump 500 miles and skip over 100 colleges in between. Do you think
yeah.
that's
I think
some of it?
but I think the key is the word opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Think the opportunity to do something rather than just watching other people do something. Like if I had to just put it into a nutshell on why small colleges are really a good idea for students and why students would go there, because they have a chance to actually do something. I know students that have been in, every single theater performance all 4 years, and then go on into professional work. The opportunities, the opportunity to play sports, the opportunity to do significant research, not just helping a faculty member with their research.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have at a lot of the big universities so much.
Mm-hmm.
But small college students, I want to do research on thus and such. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's like a Monmouth for that Sophia program, students will suggest a topic for the next year. It's just so cool, so many opportunities, and that's I think having something distinct, yes, but having a, a set of opportunities for students to do something builds their resume. Resume building. I mean, I could go on forever about this. I think that if you graduate from a big university, a lot of times, what do you say? You say, I graduated from such and such. I have a 3.4. I had a summer job doing this and this. Now give me a job. I mean, at a small college, it's like, well, I was president of this group and I was president of that group and I formed this group and I went to this country and I went to this. And the list of things that people do, it's hard to get it on 2 pages on the resume. And so most of the small private colleges have 99% placement or 98% placement of their graduates. Everyone's helping them get a job. The career center is helping them. The alumni are helping them. The faculty are helping them. It's not like a student against the world. It's like a student as part of a group helping you with your future. And that's part of what I call the magic of the small colleges.
Well, you have a really nice section at the start of your book, Small College Magic, where you give like 20 reasons that make the case for small colleges. So, yeah, you highlighted a couple here, but in your book, you have a lot. You have a lot of reasons that you lay out.
Yeah,
And
it's actually 30 of them. Yes, and
is it
and it
30?
was
Okay.
actually 29. It was actually 29, but I thought, well, that's an odd number. I need
Mm-hmm.
to come up with something
I
30,
need
so I
another
came up
one.
with another. I need another one. But one of the ones that people don't always think about is the fact that there's a lot more focus on actually speaking in front of people,
Mm-hmm.
and more of a ability to write well. Because even like in the physics classes at a lot of small colleges, you have essay tests. They like you to be able to write. And I mean, we can go over all 30 if you have a couple hours, but
So I'm gonna go back to the speaking one. Do you attribute that to the fact that it's smaller discussion-based classes, so people are just used to having, that sort of verbal exchange of ideas, or do you think they build like more speaking into the curriculum, or do you think that because it's so small, through activities you're speaking a lot? Like, what's your theory on the speaking part?
I think it's a mixture of
Mm-hmm.
different things because yes, you're in small classes and you don't have a choice but to talk. the faculty member do not give the faculty do not give you an opportunity to pass on answering questions.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I
And
want to
know
get
that,
even more into small colleges, both their advantages, opportunities, as well as some of their
mhm.
challenges. But let's talk about your book, especially the most recent one, Small College Magic.
Okay.
And if a listener is out there and they're familiar with the Fisk Guide, or they're familiar with Princeton's Best 390 Colleges, or they're familiar with Lauren Pope's book, Colleges That Change Lives, how would you say your book is different than those three, which are three of the, I'd say, more well-known books that
Yeah.
cover 100, well, Pope's book is closer to 30, but 30 to 40, but that cover a range of colleges and have descriptions of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I mean, excuse me, it's not even close to trying to emulate anything or to replace anything. It's just a completely different type of set of colleges. You didn't mention Selingo's new book.
Oh, Dream School.
Yeah, Dream
Yeah,
School,
but his
because
book he just
he
lists
lists 75
75 schools
colleges.
at the end of
Yeah,
his book, but most of his book is more explaining college admissions
yeah,
frenzy and that kind of thing. So I didn't count that as a book
yeah,
that's focused on
yeah.
explaining what schools are like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I don't, in my book, I don't explain what those schools are like either. I don't go into a lot of depth on each institution. I've just done some research in terms of statistics, the average amount of money that they give for merit scholarships and such. But, the reason I started coming up with some lists was the fact that um, the Colleges That Change Lives book, I think, changed my life because I would do college fair after college fair after college fair. And
Mm-hmm.
the colleges, when the CTCL would have this little tent on their table at a college fair that said CTCL, and
Mm-hmm.
students would flock to those tables,
Mm-hmm.
right? Monmouth is just as good as those other schools, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, why don't students come to my table? Maybe I should get a little tent, some sort. It, it People are so swayed
Well, it's branding.
by things like that.
It's become a
It is.
brand for maybe 30 years now or close to
Yeah,
that,
and I mean they're good schools, but
Sure.
they don't give percentage wise maybe quite as much merit aid because they don't have to, because they're more popular now, and I want to highlight schools that don't get the popularity. The reason I mentioned Selingo, he refused. Like, if you read his book, it says I'm not going to include any colleges with less than 1,000 students. Well, there's a lot of really, really, really excellent small colleges, with less than 1,000 students.
So can I tell you, though, his reason why he says that? Because it was one of the questions that I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
And so when he looks at the percentage of colleges that close or that have financial challenges, there's a higher percentage of them that are in that under 1,000 number.
That's true, but there's still a lot of really good schools that aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he ignored some really, really awesome colleges with less than. So when I came up with the Small
Mm-hmm.
College Magic book, and I came up with my list of 250, there's not much overlap between CTCL or Dream School
Mm-hmm.
lists. A little bit of overlap there, but I want people to look at colleges that keep their costs down, and in good colleges, um, that's it. I mean, I, there's a lot of colleges in this world that cost on an average for a higher income person, 40, 45,000. I don't include those in
Mm-hmm.
my book. I I use a cutoff of about mid 30s. I want people to be able to go to college without spending all their retirement money away. And so I picked a whole bunch of colleges just because I want them to be looked at. They're so ignored. I mean, people like, they've never heard of Susquehanna. What a wonderful institution Susquehanna is. How about Linfield on the West Coast? How about Center College? How about Randolph College? How about Randolph-Macon College? How about and there are so many good schools out there. Wartburg, Luther, Ripon. The
You'll be
list just
happy to
goes on
know
and
that
on and
that
on
we're
and on.
about to have Center on the podcast, and
Oh, good.
We just had Luther College on the podcast. I saw that made your list.
Oh,
You know,
oh yeah.
we've had
I
Cornell
have a
College in Iowa on before, so what we try to do here is strike a balance between doing deep dives on some of the brand names because people are interested in them and they're looking
yeah,
at
of
them, and a lot of them are very good schools and they deserve
course.
to be, they deserve to. We try to pull the hood back and not just do, spin and infomercials, but try to really take a look at, okay, what are the strengths and weaknesses? But then we also try to point out some of these underrated gems. And I noticed in going through your list, I almost felt like your book could have been called Hidden Gems or something like that,
Yeah,
because
true.
I was very curious. Like, how you have this really nice section. It's an early part of your book where you list all the schools by state, that are included. And I was really
Yeah.
curious when I was going through, like, so for example, if you're looking at Pennsylvania, I noticed that, you know, you won't have a school in there like Franklin and Marshall, Dickinson, Muhlenberg, Swarthmore, Haverford, but you will have schools in there like Albright, Juniata, Susquehanna. And I started to kind of see a theme where it seemed like you were trying to shout out some of the unheralded schools that fly under the radar and not just look at what are the quality small schools that are out there. Is that fair to say?
That is more than fair to say.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal because I went to Wartburg, which a lot of people never heard of. I worked
Mm-hmm.
for Wartburg, which nobody's
Including
ever
me.
heard of.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for Monmouth of Illinois for 27 years, gave blood,
Mm-hmm.
for 27 years. And people don't know about these really good little schools that are out there. And that's exactly it. I don't mention a lot of the well-known schools because they don't need to be extra. What's the word I'm looking for? They don't need more publicity. They have plenty of they have plenty of publicity.
Mm-hmm.
But these other colleges just need a little bit more attention. And I think like if Northland College up in Wisconsin, Northland College had more attention put to it 15 or 20 years ago, it wouldn't have closed. I mean, what a wonderful Northland College. It's just fantastic little place. I just think for these small colleges, all you really need is a few more students every year for the alumni to say, the college is growing again and we're going to get more money. But if you have a fewer students, if you're an alum, are you going to get money? If the enrollment just keeps going down, it makes you not want to be a donor. Like if you're an alum, excuse me. But if you go to an institution that is getting even a little bit bigger every year, it
Mm-hmm.
gives you optimism, and then they get more money, and then the school flourishes. So it doesn't take that much in terms of extra interest to really make a huge difference at a small private college. I mean, a dozen more freshmen would be fantastic at so many of these schools, and it's going to have infinite, effect on that institution. That's why I give the attention to these schools, rather than some of the others that don't need as much attention.
Yeah, and I think that it's great what you're doing because I do think there needed to be some writing out there to herald and champion some of the smaller schools. I've been saying this for 25 years to people about CTCL, and I would go to their fairs and their conferences, and those are a lot of fantastic schools in there. But I would tell everybody, Lauren Pope just chose about 30 schools there. He could have picked another 100 or
Yeah,
maybe even more. That was more a matter of probably what he could manage to to do a deep dive on or to visit and to meet with the leadership or
right.
whatever. It's not like if you're not in that, but I have to tell that to people about the FISC guide because the FISC guide, I think is fantastic. And I know the FISC guide gets close to 400 schools. Same for Princeton Review's Best 390. But there's some very good schools that don't make it in there. And sometimes it's like, well, if you're not in the FISC guide, how good could you be? And so I see the
Exactly.
need for someone to herald or champion or accentuate the strength of some of these other schools. And I think your work is really, really important that you're doing. I do have a question though for you. So here's the flip side, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Do you know Bob Massa by any chance? Do you know that name? I don't know if you've run across him.
No, I'm sorry.
He's been around forever. He's started in 1974, and so and he is 74. He retired after almost 5 decades of work at 5 different schools, and he worked at places like Johns Hopkins and Dickinson, but then he was at Drew College over that office for his last few years. And boy, he said it was a real challenge, and recruiting students. We had him on the podcast, Susan Tree and I, one of our co-hosts. He talked about how challenging it was. He said things like they did a tuition reset, because they didn't want people to see, $70,000. Nobody's even setting foot on the campus. So then they dropped the merit aid and slashed 20,000. But then everybody wants to be able to appeal the aid award and come back anyway on you. But he said something that I just want to get your thoughts on. So, and I'm not quoting him verbatim. So this is the essence of what he said. And he was very sensitive. He said, parents, I hope you don't think, this is the school leadership guy not being sensitive to cost. But he said, when you see a school that's giving all this merit aid away to everybody, and you shouldn't necessarily see that as a good sign, because it's expensive to do quality education extremely well. And if you the money has to come from somewhere. So if you're slashing your budget to give so much merit aid, whether it's need-based and merit-based, then, you're going to turn around and take some of that out on whatever it is. Maybe you have less advising, or you don't have as many people in your career center, or you don't have as many people name all the different departments, that we go through, whether it's academic success centers or multicultural or students with learning differences, or the amount you can pay your professors, or quite honestly, even admissions. You love the work enough to do it at a low amount of money, but for other places, that's going to be a turnover factory waiting to happen because people can't make a living wage. And so his point was, parents, you shouldn't necessarily be impressed when you see super large merit awards that are given to large numbers of people, because it's expensive to do quality education well. And if they do that, your student is receiving less services because they have less money in their budget. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let me tell you. Here's a parable. There are 3 people that have lemonade stands. Okay, they all have really good lemonade. Okay, but one day, the writer from the New York Times stops by, and he samples everybody's lemonade, and they all taste good. But he says that yours, Mark, is the best, right? So what do? You're going to charge a little more money, and you're going to get more publicity. You're going to have more people coming to your lemonade. But I don't want to seem cheap. I'm one of the other 2 people. I increase my price, but then I give a coupon.
Right.
Okay. So I still want to make a little bit of money. So, but still, your line keeps getting longer, and you keep charging more money, Mark, because you can. You see, now all that money's not necessarily going into your product, but you're making more money. You don't have to give coupons. Okay. The rest of them have to give coupons. And that's exactly what happened. The money doesn't come from anywhere. It's money that they're not receiving. It doesn't come from a bundle of a big pot of gold somewhere. They had to raise their prices just to look competitive with the colleges that did get the high rankings and so on and so forth. That's exactly what is happening with this thing. So some people just go back and say, okay, we're going to charge 25 cents for our lemonade. That's it. We're going to go back. We're not going to give any more coupons. We're not going to put a high price tag on it. We just have darn good lemonade for 25 cents. Schools like Central and Wartburg, have done, that where they do the what was the word you used, Mark? A reset of the cost, or reset of the
It's called a tuition. It's called a tuition reset.
yeah,
So these are
tuition reset.
schools. A whole bunch of schools were doing them for a while.
Yeah,
Mark Kantrowitz wrote about this, and these were schools. They're
and,
struggling with their enrollment, and they came to the conclusion, and their survey showed people aren't willing to pay 80,000 or 70,000 or whatever.
yeah,
And while they would always say, look at our merit scholarships, that's not what everybody sees. Like, there's a large percentage of people that just see the price and say, I don't have that money, so why would I go on that campus? So they said, maybe we're better off. Yeah, maybe we're better off just dropping our price so people will come on our campus and they'll think, oh, this is affordable. But of course, that comes out of the merit scholarships because you still got to pay your bills. Right.
If every college did that, that would be awesome. But you have to get all 700 and some odd small private colleges to agree that that's what they're going to do, because there's competition out there. And I know from talking to people from schools like Central that reduced their cost, and Wartburg that reduced theirs, a lot of people just view them as not being worth much, that they're not a good enough school because they don't have a higher price tag. The higher price tag is it's a perception thing of quality. See, we have to look back at history. 1983 was an awful year for most colleges. It was the year the U.S. News decided they were going to come up with their ranking systems. And then it all went to hell after that, because this whole my lemonade analogy started about 1983. I mean, that's
so here's the thing, Peter.
Life was so nice before rankings. Life was so wonderful before these rankings.
So here's what I would say. Like, part of, in your analogy, it almost is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the impression that I'm getting is that when you use the school that's voted the best lemonade, so they keep raising their price, the implication is it's almost like maybe administrative bloat or something, like they're squandering money. But
I don't know.
But if you were to go to any small school and your book that you wrote on and say, if a donor gave you $20 million right now, could you use it to strengthen your educational program? Every single one of them would say yes. No one would because that, you could say that's the equivalent of the school just raising their price because they can.
Sure.
They have an influx of money, right? Like I think you would agree, right? Every one of the schools in your book. Of
course.
Yeah. So
I think they would put it towards their endowment. I think that's the first thing they would want to do, is to put it towards their endowment.
Right. So they're not so tuition dependent every single year, and they have the rainy day fund in case whatever, you get another pandemic or something like that. You're not so tuition dependent. Right. You can use the interest and go in the operating budget.
Can use the interest.
So that's just the question that I do think you have to ask that. Like, it sounds good. These schools are 30 to 35, but there is some truth, I feel, to the point that, well, if you charged more, you'd have more resources that you could invest into different ways in your student body. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not great institutions. And that also doesn't mean, listen, there needs to be, there needs to be schools out there for people that can pay 30 to 35, besides like the schools that meet full demonstrated need, so they can take the lower resource kid and give them generous need-based money, right? And most schools don't have the resources to do that. So I think just in and of itself is a real service to people, to provide a list of schools that can come in at that price point. But I do think there's also something to be said for, like, the more resources you have, the more you can do a lot of things. Like, maybe you're bidding for a professor, you can pay the professor $40,000 more than somebody else. Maybe you get that professor, or all the other expenses that we could go through, which should be ad nauseum to our listeners, things that cost money. And if you have the money, that you can do it to strengthen programs. But I know the small colleges, they do something very, very, very well. They have community, and that you can, not always, but you can find a loving, caring environment. And for so many kids, that's incredibly valuable.
more important than some fancy equipment, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Friends, this concludes this part of my interview with Peter Pitts. We hope you join us next week for the next part. Friends, on Thursday's episode, Kate and Hillary will join me to discuss an article that appeared in USA Today about parent Facebook groups. Are they a good thing or are they over the top? We'll have the final part of my interview with Lisa and Linda about their new book, The Calm College Method. We'll also have the final part of my interview with Susan Brisson, Director of Admission at Olin College of Engineering. I was really excited this week because one of my students sent me an email and said, I got in Olin College of Engineering. Friends, I close you out with a quote that Dr. Martin Luther King said in a speech at Oberlin College in Oberlin, Ohio. This is what King said. The time is always right to do what is right. The time is always right to do what is right. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.